Uh, great to see you all here, and thought we'd do a quick round of introductions. So my name's Scarle Malik. I'm a staff scientist at the Cultural Institute of Technology in Germany, and I'm also the chair of Cost Action Multicomp. And the Cost Association has a number of networking tools, and the main one we're going to talk about today is the short-term scientific mission, otherwise known as the STSM. So Uwe, would you like to say something about yourself, who you are and where you're from?
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Popp. I'm from Germany, Karlsruhe, and my background is material science and engineering. I'm right now working with the company Apium. Before it had a different name, also when I took part in the cost action. But yeah, I'm with this company now since 2015, 6 years, yeah. And yeah, basically what I'm doing right now is additive manufacturing. And I was really glad to take part in the cost action. And I will talk more about this later and how far I could benefit from the cost action with my current work.
Also, you've been very modest because you're now the MD of the company.
Yeah, exactly. So we had some internal structural change. Before I was mainly, we are a small company, and I was the main responsible for all the research and development. And yeah, now fortunately I got the managing director. I became the managing director.
Congratulations! That's a good success.
Thank you.
Okay, Simon, would you like to say who you are and what you're up to?
Yes, I'm a senior lecturer in games technology at the University of West of England. So I've got some experience working in the games industry, but prior to that, various kind of RA posts in various kind of computer simulation kind of roles. And my kind of particular sort of research area that I'm interested in is taking ideas from what's called the game asset pipeline from the games industry and sort of applying it to visualizations and what have you for other kind of areas.
Sounds good. And Chris?
Okay. A bit of a different profile again. I'm an expatriate Brit, a bit like yourself, living in France now for 20 years. I work for the CNOS, the French National Research Association, at the Institute of Materials in Nantes on the West Coast. And I do computer modeling of nanocarbon materials. So I've worked a lot with fullerenes and nanotubes and graphene, and I'm interested in their behavior and how they interact with the environment around them, which includes matrices and composites. So the Multicomp project, the COST project, was very interesting for me, particularly there's a lot of people in there that I didn't know, and new faces to meet and new areas to take it. Okay. So yeah, it's been an interesting few years.
Sounds good. So that sounds like the networking ideals of the Cost Association. So Uwe, so where did you travel to, and what was the aim of your STSM?
I was traveling to southern Spain, to Jaén, Martos. It's a bit north from Granada, and I was there in the company Andaltech. And the background was to integrate carbon fibers, carbon nanotubes, any kind of carbon reinforcement to the polymers we're processing. So we are focusing on processing high-performance thermoplastics such as polyether ether ketone PEEK. It's a very interesting polymer. It's it has a high thermomechanical resistivity, but it's also biocompatible. And we were keen to learn more about how can we improve mechanical properties, how can we improve the behavior once the material cools down by adding carbon fibers, carbon particles. So one of the main reasons, just to put you a bit into perspective, we're working within additive manufacturing by using the material extrusion technology, meaning we have as a starting material a filament, so a very thin rod that we are feeding, we are melting it, and then we are depositing it. And PEEK is by nature semi-crystalline. This means once we have this transfer from the liquid to the solid phase, we have a volume change. And and the carbon fiber helped us deal with it a lot, and also increased the stiffness of the material.
Okay, so you actually improved the material. If I remember rightly, PEEK also has FDA approval. So yes. It opens up for biomedical applications, you don't have to have the material approved. So what happens if you add something to an approved material? Is the material automatically approved? I guess you probably know a bit more about the process.
Yeah, there's different approaches on that. So basically, you start with the raw material. So PEEK has, there's a variety of PEEK materials in the market, and they all differ by molecular weight. That's one thing. And then there is the registration, or the, how's it called? For FDA, they have the 510K white paper where they basically have done all the research on biological behavior. And they do it for a certain molecular weight.
Okay.
And the same is, it's similar here in Germany as well. In the United States, it's a bit different because they reference a lot on this certain type of PEEK. And then once you add something to it, you can refer to the base material, so to say, and makes it easier to go in. But with the European regulation, it's a bit different. I would say even a bit easier, so to say. Yeah, you have a clear guideline what to do. And stay tuned. There will be something coming.
Well, that sounds good, because one of the things the Cost Association likes to do, say, have we got something that will enhance some aspect of business or social life, etc., in the European Union? And people often say, "Oh, it's much easier to get patents and things done in the States." But it's good to hear that not only got the ideas in Europe, we can actually move forward. But moving on to you, Simon. So you mentioned the games industry, and of course that's now big news with the success of Formula E. And apparently now, if you're a youngster who's good at gaming, you've got a career in front of you. It sounds like there must be a sort of a long queue of students at your door.
Yes, I know we're definitely one of the industries that's come out very well from the whole kind of COVID situation. All of the game studios are still talking about kind of hiring a lot of our students, and almost none of our students kind of going out have had any kind of issues in still getting kind of jobs kind of going on from here. So yeah, we're definitely one of the sectors that's kind of done well out of the current situation.
All right. So what was your aim of your STSM, and where did you travel, and how did you come in contact with the Cost Association to begin with?
Basically, I was quite lucky in the fact that I managed to get two of these STSMs, both of them to visit. Chris? Was it over in Nantes? Basically, Chris kind of highlighted this, as I know he was part of like the raising impact kind of side and kind of dissemination part of the wider kind of cost action. So thought, well, if nothing else, us games tech guys are good at kind of making kind of a visual splash, kind of etc. So could we kind of use some of the tech and the kind of skills from our kind of side to kind of create more interesting, more interactive kind of visualizations was kind of the idea. So the first kind of trip over to see Chris that we kind of did was I took a system that I'd already been working on for a kind of a generic visualization of networks that I built with a colleague of mine for visualizing software, but I used like some concepts from the games industry of a so-called kind of pipeline. So it kind of processed the data to produce the kind of the visualization from it. And in principle, all you had to do was kind of swap out some of the front end of it. And I swapped it around. So instead of visualizing these pieces of software, it could display some of the really nice molecules that Chris's team kind of works on. And I'd already kind of constructed it so you could do kind of split screen multiplayer flying around the data sets and what have you, as well as VR. And one of my favorite images from the mission, the first kind of mission, was there's a picture we have of one of Chris's PhD students grinning his head off with a VR headset on, because he's literally flying down the length of the nanotube that is the subject of his PhD. And that's our shot I've used quite often, kind of showing these things off. And I've also been invited to a lot of kind of public outreach kind of events run by our university. The main thing I usually use is kind of the visualizations of some of Chris's stuff and some other kind of more generic kind of molecules, because it's we guys who are used to kind of playing with the VR and kind of game stuff, but it's still fascinating to me to see how much the muggles, as it were, aren't quite so used to kind of VR. It's still quite magical to the general public, some of that kind of stuff.
It sounds good. It sounds the kind of thing that grabs people's imagination, and also youngsters who can be persuaded into the area of science and technology and engineering. So Chris, yes. you're not exactly new to the Cost Association. In fact, no. you were the vice chair of a very successful cost action earlier, and also well used to the area of dissemination, because you work with Harry Croter in the Bega Trust. So you're not innocent in all this. So can I just tell us a bit about that, and also in association with the cost, and also especially with the Multicomp and our short-term time emissions?
Sure, yeah. I've bumped into cost quite a few times over my career, and it's a great melting pot and meeting one, and that's where you and I met originally, wasn't it? To the previous cost action I was running with Scarle. And it's one of the things I like with the STSMs, because I remember the first meeting was coming up, or one of the first meetings that you'd organised for Multicomp. And I was just chatting to Simon, because we've known each other for years. We've drunk, a fair few beers have been drunk over the years, and we know what each other does. And I think what I find is, I mean, like a lot of people, I think the game technology is fascinating.
Yes.
Like Simon says, I love this kind of, you put on a cask and you're on Mars, or you're on a spaceship, or it's just incredible what these guys, and it's just their bread and butter. They do it day in, day out. And I thought, what you do is really cool. So I said, there's this meeting going on, why don't you come along? And he came and presented what sort of stuff he did. And I remember the meeting quite well. You had quite a queue of scientists waiting to get to your desk and have a look and have a little play with this stuff. And originally, it was like we were saying, I thought, oh, this is very good for dissemination. It's very, if you want to use it as science fairs or things like that, I could really imagine putting up our molecules on a screen and explaining this to children. But the more we did it, and when Simon got that first demo going, so that, like he said, my PhD student can actually fly in 3D through these nanostructures that we're building on the computer. And you realize how clunky the interfaces are that we have. I mean, I sit here and I look at my 3D systems and I see them on a flat screen, and I have to move them around with this little mouse. And it's just, I mean, we're working really, the science we do is inherently 3D, and we're working in this 3D environment. And suddenly there's these tools which are not being exploited. And Simon popped it up. So I said, oh, this isn't just for whizzing around with the kids and kind of getting people interested. This actually has got potential for really helping us with our research.
Yes.
So that's why we kind of kept talking about this. And then we had because the master's students in Bristol, that although they're training to be gaming programmers, they have to do this kind of project for a couple of months, 2 or 3 months at the end of their masters, and they have to do it like a proper business project. So Simon got a really great student who was up for this, and I was like his candidate business employer. Client, exactly. So I pitched this and said, what can you do with this? And so with the help of the STSM money, Simon was able to come over and really talk this through, and we were able to finish it off, and they got money so that their student could come at the same time. And we spent a week just having fun really with this kind of, because it's so different to what we do normally. This isn't my core research at all. This is very blue skies for us. And so it was a lot of what would be nice to do. Once the interface is there, then you can tweak it and change it and do what you want. So it was just really kind of what's useful for us. And at the end, we had the second one. We had this, I didn't explain, but we changed the technology, because the first one is great when you sit with this 3D cask. It's totally immersive.
Right.
But that's actually, sometimes it's not great, because you want to sit around with the other guys in the team and you want to talk about what's going on and you want to look at it, and science is collaborative, and that's quite singularly immersive. It's not necessarily what you want for doing research. And we came across this technology called the Looking Glass Factory. And this is like a kind of perspex box that you can plonk on your desk, and it acts as a computer screen, but it's actually doing a series of slices of images. And depending on what orientation you look at it, you see a different image. So the end result is you actually see inside this perspex a sort of 3D picture, because each eye is picking up a different picture. And so it's great, because it sits on the desk and you see these molecules just kind of floating in space on your desk, which is it. So, and then anybody sitting around can see it as well. So you can then start moving it around. And Simon's student even managed to get it working with another thing called the leap motion. So you can detect your fingers using little infrared cameras in front of it. So by having your hand, you could sort of turn your hand like this, and then the molecule is turning in the display. Fantastic stuff. So that's about where we got. And I mean, it was one of these great ideas. I saw the thing on the on the web, and that's really cool, that Star Trek and stuff like that. But in no way did I imagine we'd actually, by the end of Multicomp, actually get to a working prototype. So it's full credit to Simon and his student for pulling that off. It was excellent. So yeah, so I've now got it on my desk at work. I'm just in the process of buying a very zoopy computer because it takes a lot of graphics processing to run something like that.
Yeah, effectively, it's got to draw like 40 screens worth of images to get the entire full display. So you have to have a reasonably kind of pokey machine to get it to work, unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah, so Uwe, what do you think of all this? So do you think you could use looking glass technology for 3D imaging of your 3D printing?
I don't know, actually. I guess it's not that complex. We are right now doing with all the construction tools we have with the CAD drawings. It's still somehow not that complex that we need to fly through the 3D printer, but maybe it could help. I don't know.
Yeah. So so you mentioned that you were out in Spain, and so you've also been along to a few other network meetings. So are you still in contact with any of the cost people, both socially and commercially?
Unfortunately, not that much. Really, unfortunately. So we tried to have some kind of collaboration points.
Yeah.
But somehow the directions split again.
Yeah.
Oh.
I guess it's something that could be probably taken up, because I remember you got on very well with Ari from Finland.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he had the biodegradable glass fibers. Yeah, we tried to implement them, but then I think we didn't move forward with the glass fibers simply because we were missing a customer in the end. So to integrate the glass fiber into our polymers, and then find an applicant, that was basically the point where it all stopped, and then you know how it is. Something else came on the table. Yeah.
I guess there's a general question to everyone is about how things have changed in these COVID-19 days, and everything's on Zoom. Because I think up until this point, a lot of people were very busy, because it was quite difficult contacting Ari, because he was both involved in his university and also a company, and I think he was in charge of both bits, and trying to track someone down physically was quite hard. But these days, ironically, might be easier to sort of re-establish these contacts you're wondering about. So I guess can do around. So Simon, well, you're used to VR anyway. So has it made any changes?
I'd say, strangely enough, obviously because my students are very kind of gamer type people kind of anyway, I think I almost get more kind of engagement from my students and what have you through our sessions through this kind of an interface than we would do in the room. I'm afraid that kind of slightly socially awkward cliche can be quite true, unfortunately, for some of our kind of students. So yeah, because they can use the chat as well as everything else, it's very much a multimedia kind of experience for them, and they're used to it. I mean, the number of them that have like serious high-end microphones and cameras and things, because they're also Twitch streamers and YouTubers as well, quite one or two of our kind of students. So
cool technology.
Yeah, for them, this is probably more real than actually being in the room for some of them.
Okay. So about you, Chris, because you say you're mainly theory. So I guess theory's moved on from old envelopes and stubs of pencil. So.
Yeah, no, I'm sitting in front of my bank of screens at the moment. So I've got my home set up. So it's for me, it's very mixed. I think in the COVID time, it's been, I mean, in some respects, it was nice. It was easy for me because I was able to simply translate my office home, and that didn't change my working flow on that side very much. But I mean, you know, Ali, that science is, well, all of you know that science isn't done in isolation, and that you can run for 6 months, or in my case, probably 6 months with the backlog of ideas and with just kind of occasional Zooms. But for the longer term stuff, you need to be sat around a whiteboard or the cost meetings. I mean, a lot of the good science is done with a pint of beer in your hand and with a beer mat and a pen and kind of the slightly what-if stuff. And that side is, I'm a big fan of Zoom meetings. A lot of people I know really don't like them, but like you say, I think they're easy to set up. They can be quite focused and quick, and you don't lose a day or two. And I mean, they're more climate compatible. was getting very nervous about all the flying I was doing. I mean, Multicomp is great for travel, but there is a cost associated with it. So I think efficient, effective travel, I think is, I like the fact that it's forced us to think about all these things. And I hope that when we come out of the far end of this, we will still have room for all of these things. We'll still have room to talk to each other, to communicate face to face, but in a way that's effective and isn't too wasteful.
Yeah.
So that's but yeah, this is one of my I think Zoom is not the best way to, or sorry, without product naming, any of these video conference tools are not the best way, because you turn on, you have the meeting, and you turn off. So I think what's missing for me is some way that we can do this round the edges chatting, this kind of slightly more free form contact. Maybe we need a few more Zoom beer Multicomp meetings.
Well, that's right, yes, because there's the socializing that's associated with the meeting. It's difficult to do because once you've been in the Zoom meeting, you think, do I really want to Zoom socialize? But we've talked about the academic area. So with your company, because of course the thing is, you're aiming to sell high-end 3D printers to your customers, and so going and seeing them and say, look, this is what it does, and they think, well, that's great. Because when I saw you visit your company, I had a look, thought, wow, this is really great stuff, and had some suggestions about things you could try and make it. I think you've been trying it as well. So how you're finding these COVID days as in a commercial enterprise?
Yeah, it's I have to agree with Chris on many points. So the Zoom meetings, for example, they are really effective. So once you have to just chat about something and you just meet, you have a certain time frame and then you can move on. There's not too much waste. But once it comes to complex problems and we have to think about a strategy, or we have to think about a campaign or something, it gets really hard to have the same feeling around, and you cannot really transfer your ideas in the same way than once you sit across somebody else. And also we have been visiting fairs, or we've been attending fairs also online, but it's completely not the same. So it's so distant. So basically somebody's interested, you meet 200 people a day and you're completely exhausted at the end of the day, and you think, oh yeah, so many leads, but none of them are really binding or connecting, and you cannot get the same experience. You cannot say, have a look at this, or we can do that, and I have this piece here in my hand, and it looks nice, but you cannot feel it and you cannot experience it in the same way, and that's something that makes it really difficult. So yeah, maybe we can, once this is over, just take the good things out of it and go back to the things that we used to know, and we are missing so much right now.
Yeah. So one of the things that about the cost association, because the various network tools, which the short-term site missions, one of them, also the training in schools and our network meetings. So people like us who are a bit older, we've really got the contacts and we can work on that. But of course, the youngsters, a lot of the meetings was the first time they met some of their peers, and also some of the scientists who. Well, one of the things about some of the network meetings, some youngster presented a poster, and then someone said, "Oh, that's really interesting," and then short-term scientific mission came out of it, and often a paper came. So that could have been one of the first papers of their PhD. So, so Simon, your younger students. So you say that okay, they tend to meet online anyway, but how do you think they'll be able to network with someone they say a more senior person they don't really know?
I think it's interesting that a lot of the different kind of communications channels there's very much a scene of a level of formality that they see that different kind of ones of these kind of different, what we would have previously considered social media or communication channels kind of as. So they very much see Zoom and other kind of things as very much, that's a very formal kind of route. So it's very interesting that they kind of do generally go more into that kind of more, this is more of a proper kind of meeting kind of thing. Whereas if we try and use kind of other kind of things, they see that much more of a social kind of space. So
right, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So about you Chris, because of course you're a CRS director, and so of course you're concerned about attracting students, but then you also want to make sure that your students do well afterwards, and contacts and networking is an important thing. So
Yeah, absolutely. It's a huge problem. I agree with you, and I don't know the answer to it. I think there is a grain of truth in what Simon's saying. One of the tools that we found, because I mean, for example, I've got a student in Japan at the moment who's meant to be coming over here, and she's just not allowed to leave the country. So she's a little bit isolated over. There's kind of the interactions even within the group that I mean, at one point I had one student in Bordeaux, one in Italy, and one in Japan, and then the whole group was running virtually. And so even just beyond, before you even start thinking about interactions with external groups and forming your network links, I think there is scope with technology. I don't think it solves everything, but like Simon was saying, there is the tools like Slack and Discord and some of these. And those I've found we've started to use those better. There's a reluctance amongst the older members of the scientific community, but once you can finally lever them in, it breaks. That is one way that breaks the barriers down, because like Simon says, these are typically intrinsically very informal communication with media. I think sometimes the students can use those to chat with some of the other more senior staff,
right?
Ways that they would be difficult to do in Zoom. And so there's somewhere you can help. There's that you can use the tools like this, but I think you're right that at the end of the day, we do need to be sitting people down. It's because it's like you say, it's sitting around a post, or it's when people get talking and other people join the conversation around posters and around the bar and the conferences. Those sort of moments when it's really good for the students.
I think the closest we've got to that is some of our kind of team building exercises we did at the start of the academic year. We actually used a thing called AltSpace VR, which is it's an online 3D environment which you can do either through a screen or with the VR stuff.
Oh,
so we got our students to actually form their teams for a group module actually in that space. And obviously they're a bunch of gamers, so they're used to that kind of environment kind of anyway, but it really kind of broke the ice and got people. And the nice thing about that is you could kind of break away in the area and start kind of discussing kind of things, because it's got a built-in chat system as well, what have you. And scarily, Microsoft have just brought it out and they're talking about integrating it into Teams. So you should be able to kind of create not just a team meeting, but maybe an AltSpace kind of meeting straight from Teams. Whether that happens or not, I don't know, but I've heard rumors that might be happening.
Okay, yeah, because Zoom got their breakout rooms, etc. So
yeah. But this is a 3D environment you're actually kind of moving around in, so yeah.
So, okay, so we're getting towards the end of our time. So I have a final wrap-up question. So to all of you, I'll start with you, Uwe. So I'll give you a warning. So what would your advice be to future researchers or people, I don't know, future talents come to your company or whatever, who might face similar pandemic situation in, say, 10, 15 years' time? In other words, so we've been a year on into this. Some people have learned some things, other people seem not to have. But anyway, let's say, as your senior position, what would your advice be to a younger new person in your company or a younger researcher?
Yeah, first of all, I could completely understand the frustration. So there's somebody that is going out, wants to go out, explore the world. I can only give the advice to stick to the rules and to the proposals that you are given. Simply because if everybody keeps to all the restrictions, it's way easier and way faster behind us than having this constant and nerve-tearing way of opening, closing wave. It's it's just not effective. So I can just recommend to them, please encourage everybody in your environment to just stick to the rules, get it fast behind you, and then you can return to a normal life.
So, Chris.
Yeah, okay. To take a different line, I would say not exactly plan for the worst, but look ahead. Things that I think the smart people in our lab managed to, if you've got things like experimental work to do, assume that you're not going to be coming back and do it, and just rake in that data, kind of go strategic and plan ahead, because you can spend all the time at home analyzing the data. So I think people who did quite well with that. Make you full use of the technology and stay in contact with people, and just there's not much else you can say. You've just got to brave it out, and it will get better, and you will come out the other side. But in the meantime, but make the most of whatever time and opportunity you have, and things like cost projects. If you can go.
Right, definitely carpe diem. So, Simon.
I think I'm kind of assuming the worst has kind of happened now, so that you are stuck in kind of lockdown and everything. To me, it's demarcation. Make sure that the workday doesn't kind of spread into quote kind of your time. And I think, ironically, that actually makes you more proficient, more efficient. We always have to tell our students, warning against the concept of like crunch and ridiculously long working hours and things. And the fact is, you just work better if you try and stick to your kind of 9 to 5. And it's now I'm no longer at work. I'm doing my stuff and make a very clear kind of demarcation. I mean, you can just about see kind of behind me, there is this one big computer, but back there, that's the same computer. Whereas Office has not been put anywhere near that machine or installed on it. All you can do is play games on it, and that's very, very kind of clear. I'm no longer at my work machine. I'm playing games now.
Excellent, good. So, okay, we've got the last 2 minutes. Anyone like to say anything about their cost-associated experiences or anything?
Just add a quick point, Ali, that I think to blow the trumpet for for these exchanges. Yes. I think there's a lot to be said for them, that because they're so quick and easy to get, that this is it's a compliment to say that this is easy money. It's not big money, but it's if you've got to write a 30-page project and it's going to take you 3 or 4 weeks and it's got to be the best project, it eliminates a lot of the young researchers, like you say, because they don't know the game of writing projects. Right. It takes a lot of your time, so you tend to take less risk because you want it to pass. So with these scientific exchanges where we can do a quick thing and we say, okay, we're just going to do a week together, I think it allows you to take risks. And so, like this work we're doing with Simon, this is nothing at all to do with my core project. And there's no way this collaboration would have happened if we'd had to go through a formal conventional grant application process. So I think these SDSMs are very valuable in that sense. And a related point is I think it also encourages interdisciplinary work. Yes. Because it's the same thing. If you're doing something interdisciplinary, you're moving out of your core activities. So you're moving into something which to some extent you could consider like a bonus time. So you're not going to be wanting initially to invest a lot of time and effort into that because it's just not sensible to do. So I think that it's a part of that risk analysis. I think the SDSMs are extremely effective tools for high risk interdisciplinary projects like this. And so they're a great tool. A long way to continue.
I think that's quite a big thing with the EU projects and Horizon Europe. They're into this big risk, but potentially high gain idea. So if people start thinking, okay, it's possible to do that, and they can do it, So that's excellent.
I'd say the same for me. Was it that kind of aspect is kind of great as well, because obviously my kind of background, the area I kind of work in, it's more kind of industry and kind of teaching focus is kind of my kind of work. So for me, it's that nice that I can now kind of tick that box if I now apply for kind of wider funding, saying yes, I have already kind of won some kind of funding. As Chris said, okay, it's not a huge amount, but it's that classic catch-22 thing has been ticked now. I've got some funding, so it's easier to get kind of further funding. Plus, it's a kind of proof of principle kind of as well. Although those kind of things all nicely lead on to potentially, we hopefully kind of further kind of development of it.
Great. Last word, Eva?
Yeah, I can just say I totally enjoyed my stay in Spain, and I can just recommend it. And it was a great experience. I wouldn't miss it.
Thank you very much. I think that's a good wrap. Thank you for your time this morning, and we'll meet again